Yo, this is the Ancient Texan. I thought I'd throw a few words out about a story on the daily that I heard today. It's about a new technology that grinds up um, salt water, uh, salts, and sprays them into the atmosphere and makes an aerosol. And, you know, done on a large scale, it would make clouds more reflective and allow some cooling underneath where this happens. They're actually doing this in Australia too, and this one was done in the United States. And it's kind of like a plan B for global warming. People are reluctant to do it because of the potential side effects, like it can affect weather patterns and where it rains and where it doesn't rain. So you could, it's pretty clear it will help cool the earth, but side effects like where the rain shifts to um, could be a problem. Obviously, if you shift it away from someplace that needs it for agriculture, or you flood some other place, I mean, could be serious downsides. But they're kind of saying, well, we're not taking it all that serious, and we're not making the changes to avoid global warming. It reminds me, the certainty involved around global warming reminds me of how certain I used to be that the world was overpopulated and a lot of people believed this back in the 90s, uh, that we were going to just blow up the population and all of us, you know, a lot of us starve. Things were going to get really bad from too many people. Well, and I remember having an argument about that with a Catholic friend, Mauricio Langs, and I was sure that he was just being stupid. That his not using birth control pills, his family, that they're just going to overpopulate the world. Well, it turns out now that we actually have the problems going the other way in half of the world, especially industrialized world. Population is collapsing. So I remember how certain I was and how it turned out to be wrong and how everybody was certain. Well, I think we are experiencing global warming. I am not as convinced that it's going to be the disaster we're projecting. Of course, it could even be worse than the disaster. But I don't yet hear, projections of, millions of people dying. Maybe there's drought and hard times for poor people. But that's kind of what it means to be poor, and I'm sorry for them, but um, I don't know going down the other route how much better it's going to be for them. So, I mean, I reserve the kind of thought that I don't really know, and I'm being told things, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily true. And the amount of uncertainty in the scientific reports about global warming is much higher than after the reporters and the politicians get a hold of it. There's a high level of uncertainty moving into the future. I also think about a book I read I think it was in the 80s, called MegaTrends. Now, that book is outdated, and, you know, it'd be interesting to go back and look at the predictions there. But the concept was that some things, if there's a trend, a mega trend going in a certain direction, it's really hard to reverse it. And you just have to let it run its course. And here's the mega trend that's been going on for a long time. People have got prosperous and gone from poverty to middle classdom with fossil fuels. It's been the way to get out of being poor. Poor people still want to get out of being poor. That trend is so powerful that I don't think you can override it by just telling people they ought to change their ways, because if they don't, life's going to get bad. I don't think most people, like if you're living in Nigeria and burning down the forest for your energy, even though your country makes more oil than anyone else on the African continent, even if you're in Nigeria, you're going to keep burning your wood because somehow we're, as humans, not smart enough to figure out anything about fossil fuels, because that's like an anathema. Instead, we're going to argue for the idealized case that they switch from wood to solar, whether or not that's a real opportunity for them or not. Certainly not going to nuclear. So we've got this mega trend. People want to be more prosperous, and fossil fuels is the road that everybody's followed for the last 100 years. I don't think we're going to buck that. But there's another trend that's counter to that. We are now using fracking to up our oil production. But if you listen to some of the experts, we're drilling more wells and getting out about half as much as we used to out of wells. And we're expanding the rate of well production faster and faster to keep the oil coming. There's pretty good evidence that Saudi Arabia's past its peak, and it's getting pretty obvious that the U.S., with the number of wells they're drilling to keep the oil coming, we're getting near our peak. Russia's getting near their peak for a completely different reason. In fact, they're way below their peak. But that's kind of situations are not going to get fixed overnight. In fact, Russia may be a long time in recovering from the effects of this war. So, if one looked out like the next 50 years, it's very unlikely the use of fossil fuels is going to increase much from the point it is right now. Now, the one exception to that is coal. India and China are both making new coal-powered plants for making electricity. But I think they're going to do that independent of how much oil gets pumped in the world. And I think most of the world has given up. So coal is still a big, I don't know how that's going to work out thing. But I'm pretty sure oil, natural gas, we're at the peak and going down. And we're going to, as those wells go dry, and you get that big sucking sound at the end of the straw, production is going to go down fast. So I can see in a decade that the problem is no longer, shutting down fossil fuels. It's trying to open up enough fossil fuels to not experience a cataclysmic drop in living standards. Now, is that just hypothetical? I don't know. I think it's more than hypothetical. Proven? No. But I think it's not an insane postulate either. That the megatrend is that oil production is going to be declining going forward in the world. People population is going to be declining. New technology to make electricity is going to be going up. We might even copy Finland for taking care of nuclear waste so we can build more nuclear reactors. A lot of good stuff can happen. And I don't see the doom and gloom. I think things are just going to kind of slowly sort themselves out. Meanwhile, let's just have a closing chapter, an appendix on the political situation. Joe Biden, I think, is a pretty good guy. I wish he wasn't running, but decent fellow. For a politician, you got to remember that. And then there's Trump, who's slowly or quickly going down the tube of dementia. And yet, half the population supports Trump despite his obvious personal shortcomings. I'm not sure why they support him, but I see a lot of reasons not to. And then there's Joe Biden, the old man that's getting a little crusty and getting a little respect lately after his State of the Union address. How does that affect global warming? Well, I think if Trump gets elected, our efforts in that arena will diminish. He will have an impact. The half of the people that elect him will have an impact. Half of them don't believe global warming is happening. It will have an impact on what happens in Russia, and that will in turn impact what Europe is able to do financially if they're supporting Ukraine without America's help. A lot of stuff ripple and change. And big trends and events shape the future. And it's kind of an illusion that we know what's happening. We have some postulates and theories. So I don't tend to worry as much about the global warming. I actually am a technologist, so I kind of believe that technology may save the day. And people say that's a moral hazard because people don't they don't have to worry about anything or make any sacrifices. But I think life gets its lessons to us whether we want it to or not. And if it doesn't get the lesson to us on global warming about the necessity of, sacrifice sometime, then it'll get that message to us another way. I worry much more about Trump and Putin pushing the button on nuclear weapons than I do global warming. That's a real existential crisis. And that's about all I got to say today. It's about megatrends and our illusion of knowing what's going to happen. Anyway, this is the Ancient Texan wishing you a good day. Namaste.